So today, I think the main topic of discussion is like how writers can benefit from book fairs or other in-person events or things like this. Audrey sent around an article talking about the benefits of attending these sorts of things. And Mark, I understand that in April you'll be attending an event, right?
Yes, I will have a booth at a festival in my local community, and I have been to not as a participant, but as a visitor. I've been to a few in the last year or so as well.
Cool, cool. That's this is something I've been thinking about a lot, especially in the age where I think writers are sort of nervous about being replaced by AIs. Um, this is something that I think is interesting is the more personal connections you can make, that's going to be one of the last things that can be replaced virtually. So, I mean, I think if you can meet readers or other writers at some sort of, uh, a book fair or any sort of thing like that, I think this is a great opportunity. Now, I'll speak for myself, but I think a lot of us are probably like this. I'm a very shy, introverted person, and the idea of going out somewhere and meeting people is like, oh, I don't want to do this. So that's sort of that's the paradox, is probably the thing we need to be doing is something we don't want to be doing.
Mm.
That's the challenge for me as well.
And me. Yeah, and me. Yeah.
It's one of the things that just, on a personal growth level, I'm trying to overcome, and it's one of the reasons why I signed up for this festival is to get out there and put myself into situations that may be uncomfortable, but it's the only way to have those kinds of interactions that you described, because um, I can do all the blog posts and things on Facebook and Twitter, but that's not, that's one avenue. But another avenue, and it was one of my goals for last year, was to start getting connected to more local writers and writers groups. So I joined the Elk Grove Writers Guild last summer after seeing them at last year's art festival. And so I've started going to their meetings and participating in their things. They're actually having a writing conference in September, and I was seriously considering signing up to be a speaker or a member of a panel, which is like so contrary to anything I want to do. But then I realized that I will be out of town at a wedding, so I won't be able to do that. But I know some writers locally who do things like they do book signings or launch parties for their books. I went to one a few months ago, and also get their somehow find a way to get their books um, read by book clubs. And so I think there are ways to do that. It's just I'm not necessarily sure how you go about getting your books picked by a book club without probably having a connection to someone who's in the book club.
Mhm.
So, but like I said, I this is the kind of thing I want to do more of. Book festivals, and the festival that I'm going to, it's not just going to be books, it's going to be photography and a few other things. I'm actually doing a whole bunch of stuff with my photography to have that on display and available in several different forms for the art festival. So
I'm
I'd be curious.
actually here than a pure book festival. My own experience is I've done this a little bit. A few years ago, one of the people in the writers group I belong to, Victoria Writers Society, actually, organized spots at a bunch of craft fairs, before Christmas, like November. And, I thought, okay, well, I just go. And there was usually two of us at the table at any given time for like a couple hours, and everyone's books were there. And so we were representing the society, plus we were sort of selling our books, plus everyone else's books kind of at the same time. And it was surprisingly popular. I mean, in one venue, it was kind of a dud, but in most of them, it was more than I expected. And people actually bought some of my books and some of the others. And they weren't exactly flying off the table, but there were people walking by. But that was also selling crafts and artworks and things like that. And there were a lot of people there. Whereas last April, there was a sort of local writers book sale only, and it was kind of far away in this little hall, and the weather was well, the weather wasn't that bad. It was kind of cold. But anyway, there was hardly anyone there. It was just the writers, and we were all trading books with each other and buying each other's books, and basically it was dead. So I think a venue where there's all kinds of stuff on offer is a better one than when it's just purely local authors, which not everybody's going to say, oh, we must go and see this. But if it's a farmer's market or one of those night markets, which, they have food and they have crafts and all kinds of stuff. And if there's books there, then people might walk by and buy a book. So I would be more in favor of that. But at the same time, it takes a lot to get me to decide to go to these things. So I guess I'm with you guys there.
It's funny because I had the exact same experience. I went to that art festival late last summer, and there were lots of people there, all sorts of different, arts and crafts booths and, different things. And there were a lot of people milling about. And then a couple months later, there was a book festival. And like you said, it was dead. It was in a place that wasn't very convenient. And I don't know how well they publicized it, but I was there for probably an hour and a half talking to different writers and buying some of their books. And it was just dead. So I think you're right. Books only, unless, I don't know. There may be some scenarios where that would work, but I think you're right that it's better to be in a broader forum with broader things to draw people in.
Mm-hmm.
You all have one big thing that's easier for you, is that you're living in a place where English is the predominant language. I have the problem where if I go to anything here, a lot of people speak Spanish. So I have that problem. And although I've had several of my books translated into Spanish, I don't know how good that Spanish is, really. I mean, I just have to take somebody's word for it. I've done a couple. The only book fair I've really been to is the Miami Book Fair twice. But that's only because Reader's Favorite had everybody's books, all the winning books in the store, and I in their booth, and I don't really know. Well, they weren't really selling them; they were just basically going to donate them afterwards. So that didn't mean any sales. It might have meant a bit of publicity, but difficult to tell, because this is the real frustrating part about it. When you see your sales figures, you have no idea who saw what where and why they decided to buy. There's no feedback at all, really. Anyway, I've been to about 3 Christmas fairs and one other, and you sit there for hours. People rush in looking for bargains or cheap trinkets for Auntie, Peg, that they don't really like very much, or whoever, and they sort of sweep past. And I'm not the sort of person to say, oh, would you like to have a look at one of my books? Because I just know, like you all say, it's just not me. So I just find it, I think I'd be better off, standing at the side of the road saying, penny at the traffic lights or something, can I have a donation? Because I just don't feel at all comfortable doing that kind of thing at all. And since COVID, we do have a sort of more of a local thing. And I thought, well, I will go along and hire a table for the day. That's another thing, you see. By the time I bought the books and got them all the way here, I can't really sell them much less than Amazon sells them, except I can just save them the postage, if that makes sense. But they haven't started up the local Saturday morning market here for entrepreneurs, if you like. And all the other markets that they have, they travel from town to town on different days, and they're really, professionals, if you like. That's all they do, clothes and food. And of course, at one, they have a secondhand bookstore where you can walk away with a whole pile of books, for about €1. So that's the sort of competition that there's just no way somebody like me is going to make any sales. I mean, I sound very, as if I've given up on it, but to a large extent, I have.
Yeah, somebody in that Writers Society, I went to one of their meetings recently. I don't often go. They have a monthly meeting, and sometimes and there's a speaker and so on, and sometimes I go, and sometimes I have a hard time getting up to things anymore. And the pandemic sort of okayed not going anywhere. So since then, I've kind of had to really force myself. Anyway, somebody was saying that there is I think a charity sort of thing at some church that sells used books. People contribute their books, and these people sell used books in the proceeds. And apparently there is going to be a corner for people like us, local, indie authors, to sell some of their stuff. But I'm thinking it will in effect be contributing to the charity by any sales that you happen to have, which is fine. I mean, I have no problem with that. But it is yet another little niche. So I guess if you're not like me, you find all these little niches like farmers markets and little charity things and Christmas fairs and whatever, and be there. In fact, there was a fellow who, in the early days of self-publishing, when nobody else was doing it, like before it was kind of internet-based, he had a whole series of books he wrote that were based here in Victoria, BC, that were sort of historical. I think they were either children's or sort of young adult type books. And he sold them in a public square out of the back of his car. Oh. And apparently he did quite well. But I would see that car sometimes. He had, his name and his picture of his books and a little sales pitch painted right on the car, professionally. It didn't look crappy. But he obviously really worked at it and really did the personal thing. And I think maybe if schools picked up his books, that's always a good one, because then, most copies get bought and so on. But I thought, I think about it. So this was in the early 2000s. And I would think, gee, will I ever be able to do that? No way, Jose. So I didn't. But, it depends what kind of person you are and what you're capable of and whatever. So there are all kinds of venues, but you have to find them and they have to be compatible with your personality.
The other thing is that, if I take my books, I got 16 of the things at the moment. By the time I've loaded them into the car, if I want more than one copy of each book, we're beginning to talk about heavy luggage now, really heavy luggage. And then the petrol to get there and the petrol to come back. I'm making a financial loss because I'm only going to make €1 a book, maybe two at the most. So yeah, it's not really profitable. So, and I don't know. Unless I do have a few people that love book one and will go and read the rest, but a lot of people will buy a book, read it, then move on to another author. You hear where I'm coming from. It's hard to get that continuity going.
And establishing the personal link with people through these kind of venues. I can't say that any of the people who bought my books at craft fairs have sort of sought me out or followed my blog or any of that stuff. Mind you, I'm not on Facebook or anything, so maybe that's part of it. But that's it. Anyway, I think Bertolt, you were about to say something.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that, yeah, that the point you make about at a local place, if you have a book that's specifically about that place, then yes, I think you can definitely make some headway selling something that's specific to the place. That can work. Unfortunately for me, I don't, I'd have to go to Mars, I guess, or something.
Aren't there space elevator conventions you could go to?
Well, I could go to science fiction conventions.
Yeah.
Those would be the place for me, right?
Yeah, that's the other kind of thing that we haven't talked about much. These would be places where selling stuff is the main object, but then there's writers' conventions where you go to meet other writers and meet, editors and agents and get blue penciled and all this other stuff. And I have to admit, I haven't been to any of those. There's one quite famous one called I think it's the Surrey Writers Festival. It's in a community near Vancouver, British Columbia. So it's on the mainland, not too far from where I live, actually. It'd be a ferry ride, but it's incredibly expensive. And because it's like an overnight thing, you'd be staying at a hotel and paying for food but people, I know several people who've been to it, and they've kind of, on the one hand, said it was just the last word because like Donald Mass was there, and oh my God, and I don't think they achieved anything by going to it except the sort of buzz of being in the right place with the right people for a day or two. And of course, me being me, I'm not even tempted. So I can't say I've ever experienced that. But that's the other kind of thing, or comic cons, or, any of these sort of cons that some people think is the thing.
Cons of a different kind. I went to a writing conference in Mendocino County, which is on the north coast of California, a number of years ago, and they had a room where the writers, if they had published, could put their books for sale if people wanted to buy them. And I was there for 3 days, and I don't believe I sold a book, whatever I had there. So one of the frustrating things for me is how all of these different opportunities seem to rarely produce much of anything. Like you said, Lucinda, you lug all your books there, and you might make a euro per book, and you might sell a handful. So, is that worth it? And I'll find out at the festival where I have my booth whether or not anything works. But I do like, I think I mentioned this, Audrey, you mentioned it. If I can't figure out how to make online promotions work, whether it's through social media or these promo sites that I've become convinced are complete scams at this point. But if I can't do that, then the other way to do it is to try to make connections with readers. And again, book clubs or local writing events or things like that seem to be another option. The only problem with that is, unless you go on a tour across the country or whatever, you're basically only, again, making connections with people locally. And it's not, how beneficial is that going to be? Again, one of you said, you might sell a book at something, but it doesn't mean that that person then becomes a reader of all of your books. You sold that one book, and then what happens? I don't know.
Well, even if they buy the whole series, once they've read the whole series, bye-bye, we're on to it. They're going to move on. I mean, you can't write them at the same speed as they can read them. I mean, I sometimes feel quite depressed when I get a book and I really enjoy it, and I get to the end and I thought, well, it's taken me about 5 hours. And when I think of the hours that the writer must have spent writing, editing, developing, printing, formatting, cover, it's a bit depressing, really.
Well, really, when you get right down to it, what we do is kind of crazy. Why do we do it? Here we are. But when somebody did buy the whole set of 4 of my series, like, a stack this high, and I think I charged her $30, which was actually, at these craft fairs, I sort of, the books were kind of at bargain prices. Like, I think I was only $1 or $2 more than the author copy cost. But, it was kind of a thrill. This lady took put them in a big bag and took them away. And I thought, wow. But of course, that's the thing, how you read all this advice about knowing your market, knowing who buys your books. Well, when people buy your books from a bookstore or from a sale event like what we've just been talking about, you have no clue what they thought, unless they go and they post a review and you happen to recognize that it's that person, which is unlikely because so many people post reviews under pseudonym or just, sort of nicknames or whatever. You're never going to know who bought your book from the bookstore or who your market really is.
Yeah.
So I always, when I read that piece of advice, I always think, yeah, right.
this,
of-
I mean,
one-
I had a sale one day, beginning of this month, where my graph just went, sky high, and I can only think it was a book club. But who, when, where, how, why, I have no idea.
You'd think if it was a book club though, and they went to the trouble of everyone buying a copy, they would have gotten back to you, because you probably have an email address or some sort of way to contact you in the back
Oh,
of the
yes,
book.
yeah.
So,
Well,
you'd think somebody there would have said, "Hey, we read your book and we thought it was great," unless of course maybe they didn't think it was
maybe
great.
they didn't like it, Audrey. They didn't want to embarrass me.
this leads me to another thing I've thought about, just about, as so many things we discuss, this is something I see on Twitter, which is that people will complain if somebody tags them in a reviews their book and tags them, lets them know, and they gave them a negative review. I personally am like, just knowing they read the book, even if they hated it, I would be like, I'd like to at least know that. That would be something.
I've always thought that a negative review means that I've arrived as a writer. And the reality is nothing I write will be loved by everybody. That's just ridiculous for any writer to think that they're not going to get a negative review if they put their material out there. It's not going to happen ever. So, one of the things I've done is, with the last few books I've published, is I put on Facebook that it's published, and I offer signed, personally delivered copies for $10. For anybody who's local. And that has, again, it gives me a chance to, Facebook is this wonderful little tool where you can connect with people on Facebook, but you're still not having, real personal interactions with them. So doing this has given me a chance to visit friends or family or people that I don't typically see, and just, again, connect with them, and they pay $10 for an autographed book, and life goes on. So
I think one of my moments was at the Miami Book Fair. They take over the hotel for the awards, right? And they ask everybody to put the winning books up on the top of the reception area. And somebody said to me, "But you haven't got a book up there." I said, "Yes, I have. Look, it's over." Oh, God. And somebody swiped it. So I think I didn't know whether to feel pleased about that or quite devastated. It's just that it was gone anyway. But I think when you talk about connecting with writers, I think that's why I'm working so hard to build my email listing. Because although I don't do that much pushing in my email of my own books, I am getting a lot of feedback from readers who are entering the competition every month. And I do offer them a lot more free books. So I'm just hoping but it's taking a while to grow.
yeah.
That's my point of contact basically at the moment.
So
Do you
anyway.
find if somebody buys your book, they ask you to autograph it?
Hey, a few people have, but
Not everyone.
no.
Yes, because I have stood there with a pen in one hand, sort of waiting, and they said, "Thank you very much," walked away. I'm thinking, oh, okay. Maybe you're just going to give it as a present or something. I don't know. Used as a doorstop.
I think if you're known, if you're famous, like even local, then people would want you to sign. So they'd say, "See, I got the signed copy from whoever the person is," and the person they're talking to would know who that is. But when it's some total unknown that as someone would call us, a rando, they're who cares if your signature is there or not? Now, maybe if you become famous in 100 years, and that person's grandkid might be delighted to find a book with your signature in it. But, let's face it, that's not really going to be of any moment to us right here, right now.
It is cool. Sorry, Mark, this will be quick. I do have a book autographed by a friend of mine, who he lives out in New Mexico. We've never met, but he when he published his first book, he mailed me a copy and signed it, and that's kind of neat to have. But yeah, as you know, I don't do print books, so I've never had that chance to even try. Go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just going to say the friends that I give out, signed copies to, make jokes about someday when I am famous, it'll be worth something. So,
But yeah, this is something I think about like a lot. It's like all the marketing and I guess I'll use a shorthand hustling aspect of being a writer. It's like, well, the reason most of us, I think, like doing this is because it's a solitary thing that you can do on your own, and you don't have to do that. So to be told, well, you've got to go out and hustle anyway, it's like, well, that's kind of disappointing. uh,
yeah, most creative people don't become creative so that they can spend their lives marketing and promoting.
Well, that was the role of the publisher at one time, right? When, the traditional publisher, back in the good old days, especially, I think once you had a publisher, you basically just were the author, and you were kind of the front face for your book. So people would go on, tours and sign books in bookstores, and you just have to kind of show up and be you. Whereas there was a marketing department that the publisher had, and that would do all that work. So, that was then. This is now. I think now, even if you get a publisher, they don't do an awful lot, especially for the first time, brand new person. I think you kind of see how well is this person going to do, and if you don't, and your books don't sell well, that's it. Goodbye. So that's how it is now. So everyone has to market, but that's just the way it is.
I had coffee with another local writer the other day, and she said, I have signed up with a publisher. And she said, why don't you try it? And so I looked at the link and I read it through, and they have various packages, 50-50, 30-70, 40-60, and so on. And reading between the lines, they're more wanting you to pay for the formatting or the cover or something. What they actually offered in marketing was so minimal that to lose 60% of your sale, whereas what we get 95 or 98% from Amazon or whatever it is, almost 100%. I thought, no, I mean, if they really went out and really marketed it like mad, then I might have submitted in the hope that they might take me on. But I thought, no, I just can't.
Did you have to pay them for them to publish or for their packages, or was it?
They were very flexible, Mark, and I wasn't quite sure. And I haven't got anything ready to publish right at the moment. So whether they take things that I'd already got on Amazon, whether I'd have to take them down or not and start over, I don't know. So I thought, I don't think I'll go down that road.
I've had a number of experiences in the last, since I started writing, basically, is that people I work with or friends that start, talking about writing, and they have something and they tell me about this publisher they've connected with, and then I go look up the publisher, and it's basically, pay us $2,500 and we'll publish your book. It's it's today's version of a vanity publisher, and I try to tell them, don't do it. It's not going to produce what you're hoping that you're going to get. But I think every time they've ended up doing it anyway.
oh,
So, I mean, if you have $2,500 to publish a book and not get any sales, okay, go for it.
well, that makes me, this makes me feel better.
I think
What?
it's the perception that you've been published by a real publisher.
Yeah, but it's
Maybe
not. It's
they
not a
feel
real.
they should be, but they're, it's not you, right? It's somebody else who's taken your book. Now, the fact that they've done it for money rather than because they thought your book was really good.
Yeah.
Oh.
Not only that, but a very famous, I probably shouldn't mention them here, so I won't by name, but a very famous publishing house. I've seen what they produced, and there's typos all over the place. The formatting isn't right. The cover isn't quite straight. The label on the spine isn't. And I mean, I know my other half will struggle for hours swearing and cursing in the back bedroom to make sure that it's exactly right in the right place and it's You know, I've got 6, 7 beta readers all checking every format and typo and that. At least I feel when my book goes out that it looks professional. And
Yeah.
some of these people will take, as you say, $2,500, $300, sorry, $3,000, $5,000, and they just put it through the mill and shove it out there. And you lose a lot of credibility that way.
Yep. What did you say, Bertold, when I first brought this up?
I was just going to say in a way I feel better knowing people pay $2,500 and don't sell any books. You know, I don't pay anything and don't sell any books, so it's not so bad.
Right. Right.
But no, yeah, there's it's surprising how many scams there are out there targeting authors. I wouldn't have expected so many, but
Well, that's the age we live in,
yeah.
and there's scams for everything now.
Well,
And
it's not even scams. I perceived this kind of early in the game when I first was still sending things out to publishers and, you know, getting rejections or nothing. And there are all these, you know, we writers, wannabe published writers, are a huge market for legitimate things, I guess, like, you know, people who will help whip your book into shape, or, you know, people who will supposedly promote it for you. And even those, remember those big fat books called Writer's Market or whatever, different kinds of writing markets, you know, sort of directories of agents and publishers that you could send your stuff to. They were like 3 inches thick pulp paper, and they cost quite a bit. And, you know, they came out every year, and the idea was you'd buy. I mean, that when I saw those, I thought, you know, someone's making money off of us, hopeful writers. I don't know, it just struck me as one of the ironies of life.
There's a huge industry out there for that, because we live in an age where everybody wants to be a writer, and it's easy to publish now, but there's also a dwindling supply of readers. But I mean, the number of promo sites and all of these other things where for $60 we'll put your book in front of our email readership of 125,000 people. Okay, and then I do that and I sell no books.
There's only 2 sites that actually work in my experience, possibly 3.
What were they?
For hang on a minute. E-news readers today.
Yeah, that's the only one that worked for me, and that
Book
worked.
Gorilla.
Book Gorilla.
Yeah, but the real one that will get you a number 1, if you want a number 1, is BookBub. For us,
Which
it's
the most expensive of them.
800.
Yeah.
Or take a bit, depending on your genre. But they have millions on there, and it's really hard to get accepted. In over 8 years, I got accepted twice. And okay, great. You know, you get the little orange banner on Amazon, and you know, you take a screenshot of it and you use it like hell for marketing. But it's really hard to get on. It's even harder now. There's a lot of money.
I think I've described with my first novel, I used eReader News Today and actually made a couple $1,000s off of the results. But since then, I tried it with the YA novel, which I thought would be a good genre to run through that, and I think I got 11 downloads. And other than that, that's never worked. The other ones that I've tried, written word media, they do a mailing list called Bargain Booksy, and I tried that for both of the new books I published last year and didn't get anything at all. There's others that, you know, will feature your book on Twitter or on Instagram or other places, and like I said, nothing works. So I've just kind of given up on those, because I like I said, I think they're scams. And I mean, I don't necessarily want to say they're scams, but they're, you know, you get featured on one of those, but you're still like one of 15 books in the email that goes out. And if you're, you know, one of them that I was the very last book on the list. So, you know, I don't even know how many people got the email who actually looked at it. So actually saw it. But anyway, I have a question off topic when we're ready to move on.
I have nothing else. Anything else?
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm just curious if any of you have seen this happen to any of your books. My first novel, I would say about a month ago, had 89 reviews / ratings on Amazon. And then it got a couple more. And then in the last week and a half, it went from 91 ratings to 120 ratings. And because they're ratings without reviews, I have no way to see anything about what those are. And I mentioned it on Twitter, and Carrie Rubin said that happened to one of her books recently too. Have any of you heard of this or seen this with any of your books? It's only one book, not my other books.
I
No.
haven't checked my books for ages. I tend not to look at the reviews because I don't know, it just takes time and that. But I've seen this come up on one of the writers' groups on Facebook, and somebody said they thought that they had done at one time you used to get writers' reviews on, say, UK, and then writers' reviews on Canada, and then writers' reviews on America and Australia. And sometimes they put all of them together. They'll take all the English speaking things and shove it on every site,
Yeah.
and then shoves your ratings up. And that's the only thing that anybody could come up with because Amazon weren't talking.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's the answer.
Okay.
Well, these are kind of useless, and especially so. Were these when they zoomed up, Mark? Were they like 5 stars or 4 or 1 or?
Because I can't see them. I mean, the average rating really hasn't changed, so I think most of them are in the 4 or 5s. But I can't. When it's just a rating, you can't see it on Amazon. The only thing you see is a rating that comes with a review.
Mm-hmm. I think
on Goodreads you can see both ratings and reviews, but Amazon, if it's just the star rating, you don't see them broken out.
Together, like you see that little graph.
You get your one. Yeah, you get your 1 star is 2%. Yeah, that's the only thing you can see.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's a complete mystery. And like one day, I got, was it 13 in one day? I suddenly went from 91 one day to like 107 the next time I looked. And then I looked again a few days later and it was up to 114, and then it was up to 117, and now it's up to 120.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, like I said, Carrie mentioned that happened to one of her books recently. And I think, listen to that explanation, maybe that's what it is. Somewhere along the way, they decided to include international ratings, but there's plenty of reviews and ratings that I had already from international people, so I don't know.
It might be that somebody, you never know, somebody might have read something on Facebook or somebody's blog or in a newsletter or something to say, please, 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 will you write a review? And enough people felt guilty that they would suddenly sat down and typed up a review saying they loved your book.
I don't think so. And I can guarantee that I didn't sell 30 copies of that book within the last couple of months. So it's not like I sold 30 copies and magically every single one of them posted a rating. No, I don't know.
Well, sometimes you buy a book and you don't read it for months or even years.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many books around. I mean, I've got both of your latest books, Mark, and I'm not sure when I'm going to get around to them, because I'm making myself read books in the order I bought them in, rather than kind of asking my brain, okay, what do you want to read now? I have a little list, and I actually say, okay, this one's the next up. So
what you're suggesting is that some of those 6,000 to 8,000 people who downloaded it for free when I ran the e-reader news today promo back in 2012 or 2013 have now finally got around to reading it.
Could be.
Although it does seem kind of hard to believe that a whole group of people would have done that.
Well, maybe it was a book club. They all downloaded it 10 years ago and they finally got around to reading it.
Or maybe
Anyway.
it's bots. There's always bots.
Well, I think that's the other possible theory, is there's just something screwed up about Amazon's algorithm or whatever it is. And when I first tweeted about this and Carrie responded, and I just said, yeah, well, I'm waiting for them to disappear within the next few weeks. I'm sure I'll be back to 91 at some point. So
I'm trying to, and ranting again about my feelings about review or ratings without reviews. I hate the ratings without reviews.
well, especially when you can't even see them. I mean, like I said, Goodreads, you can at least see the rating. You see when you know who and when. But on Amazon, you don't even get that information. You just see, oh, I got another rating, but I don't know how many stars it was. I don't know anything at all about it other than I got another rating.
Mm. I'm just
So
going to have a look and see. Yeah.
let me know if you see anything unusual in your ratings.
Well, I'll have to take a look, because I have to admit I check for new reviews through that Author Central thing, which, you know, like, yeah, it shows your ranking and it shows reviews, but those are actual reviews. But I haven't actually visited the book's little page to see how many ratings without reviews there might be. So I'll have to have a look.
Mm. I haven't been on Author Central for ages. I'd forgotten about that, Audrey, actually.
It's got a new look. You ought to visit it.
Yeah, I got the email about that. I haven't looked at it yet, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been at all motivated lately. Mind you, it's cold here, so that doesn't help. You know, I keep telling everyone I was a bear in my previous life, and I should be in a cave now till about May, and then I'll be all right. But no, I have been very dilatory in marketing and pushing and even writing. It's just maybe you just I read your blog actually, Audrey, about, was it about taking a break and
Oh,
not
yeah?
feeling guilty about it? I think it
don't
was
know
your
if that
blog, because I
maybe
always
I
read that.
blogged something. Oh, or
You might.
maybe, oh, I know. Maybe it was that thing I had where I have like a list of little notes in this little notebook, and I'm trying to get back. Yeah, and I'm actually doing that. I was doing really well. I actually wrote for like an hour and a half a day for a whole week, and then something happened, and that kind of threw me off, and I haven't gotten back into it. But I actually have completed a very rough draft of a story.
Ooh,
And
congratulations.
yeah, it's about, I don't know, 2,000 words or something. No, wait a minute, it must be more. It was like 8 pages of my scribble, which is about 500 words. So it must be about 4, but it was very wordy. I could remember kind of pushing the pen, and I always do my initial stuff on longhand, pushing the pen and thinking, oh man, you're just going on and on and on and on. And this half of this is going to get cut if you ever, you know, revisit it and do a proper draft. But yeah, I have a whole list of things, and I'm going to move on to yet another one any day now. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to. I think it must be an age thing. Maybe this is brain fog. I didn't think I had brain fog, but maybe I do.
I found actually recently that before I'd sit down, and I don't do it by hand, Audrey, like you. I do it straight on the laptop, you know, and I've got the story in my head and I just go for it, you know, pantser style. But recently there have been times when I paused and I thought, what's the word I need? Now, I never used to have to do that. It just sort of was there. And it, you know, I just kept tapping away. But recently I've just had the thought, gosh, what's the perfect word? And I sit there cogitating about it. And that's worrying. You know, it's perhaps I should slow down. I don't know.
Well, as someone who's struggled with writing for years, I know what the two of you are speaking about.
When it really takes off, it's actually fun. It's, you know, that feeling that you're just transcribing something that is coming from somewhere, like, and it's coming from your mind, from your brain. But you're just kind of writing it down and just going along, and you think this is great. And of course, maybe it isn't great, but right at the moment, it feels like, you know, the thing to do. I guess that's why we all keep doing it, right? Because of moments like
it's that high. That's what makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's probably like being a musician. You know, you can just about play chopsticks on the piano, but if you've got a driving force, you're going to play chopsticks and you've got it really right. And then if you've got any sort of real talent, then you're going to be at Carnegie Hall or whatever, you know, etc. But again, I suppose even if you play the piano extremely well, you've still got to get an agent and a market and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just,
a whole world, I think, and it's not easy. None of these things is easy, really. Yeah.
but I have very little faith in the big publishers these days as to what they're going to take. I don't think any of us would, without being personal or anything, I don't think any of us would beat through the door. Not these days. They're just looking for stuff that they think is going to go through the roof.
Right. Well, and plus, I don't know, Lucinda, if you saw the piece on our blog that Chuck Litka wrote, but I mean, the other aspect of going through traditional publishers, not necessarily all of them for every book, but they'll end up editing your book into something that maybe wasn't what you wanted. And you have to take that risk if you go through an agent and traditional publisher in terms of how much they, yeah, we love your book, but you need to just completely change it all around and do this and do that. And, you know, that's, I think, another piece of, while I have queried a couple times. It's one of the reasons why I'm reluctant to put a huge amount of energy into it, because I wrote the story the way I wanted to write it, and I don't necessarily know that I want to have some editor tell me that they love it, but I have to fix 18 things.
Yeah, you know, I think that's why ones used to be encouraged to get published first in magazines or, you know, literary journals if you're the literary type, and that's to prove that you are amenable to being edited, because in each of these, you know, anytime your story is accepted, someone's going to ask you to, you know, maybe change some things, tinker it up, and the more you do that, the more of a track record you have. So by the time the traditional publisher is looking at your submission, they'll say, ah, yes, they've had, you know, they've been published, so that means we can work with them. Otherwise, you might be labeled as, what did he say, difficult. Now, where did I read that? Was that in Chuck's post? You don't want to be labeled as difficult, because then you'll be on your way out.
Yeah, I actually wanted to burst into tears when I saw the cover that Macmillan put on my book. It wasn't what I imagined. I wanted, you know, I just, I took one look at it and thought, oh, heck, you know, I mean, it wasn't what I had envisaged at all, even though they wanted me to do the little drawings to show. I mean, they were really pathetic little, they got a proper artist to do them, but they wanted me to show you what what the artist should do and put it where and how. And I was so disappointed in it. So when self-publishing came and you actually had control over everything, it was great, because you could say, right, and I changed the covers on my earlier versions on the books to be, and then I didn't even know you had to match a series, which is, you know, makes it more saleable. So yeah, there's a big learning curve there, but at least you're in control and you can hopefully turn out something that looks pretty good.
That is one of the great things about indie publishing is, yes, you are in control and you don't have to answer to people who aren't really interested in telling a story, but are just interested in selling things. So to me, that definitely makes it worthwhile. I want to end this on an upbeat note.
Yeah, I was thinking, be down on the mountain, maybe because it's February, you know, winter's dragging on. But, you know, there are upsides and downsides to self-publishing. And of course, one of the downsides is marketing. And the other one is that ebooks, at least, and our self-published books never go out of print. So there's just more and more and more books for readers to choose. And there's more other things that they're doing, you know, like things, you know, they're streaming all kinds of stuff, and plus there's life. So it's just, that's why it's so hard to actually have people buy our books, is because there's too many choices and not enough time. but we keep doing it, and we're happy to have the control, and it's a creative thing, and here we are.
And like you
And it's
said, that feeling you get of when you're really on a roll, that's really something.
And it's a quiet, fairly low cost hobby where you're not disturbing your neighbors with your drum kit or, learning how to play the violin. And you don't need a lot of space for it. You just need, enough place to put your whatever you're writing on. So it's very good for family life.
Yeah, and it keeps your brain active, and it doesn't have to be expensive. If you don't get sucked into one of those publishing packages, that cost thousands of dollars, you really can do most of the operations yourself or cheaply. And that's time. It's that whole good, fast, cheap pick two. That's really true of this whole enterprise.
And your paperbacks will be there on somebody's shelf for long after you've gone, hopefully.
Yeah, probably.
Which is a great thing. You leave something behind. So a lot of people don't leave anything behind. I mean, apart from the family and the families they've had. But we're actually leaving something like not bricks and mortar, but they're actually something tangible that somebody can say, look, this is still here.
So in other words, keep writing.
Keep
And
writing always.
Pursue your dream, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.